Hey, what's up everybody? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and today I'm going to be reviewing the PlayArts RYU from Super Street Fighter 4. He stands at just about 8.5 inches tall, so it's about in line with the rest of the PlayArts Kai figures. It is a good figure overall. I'm very pleased with it, but I do have a couple of gripes. Before we get into any of that though, let's go ahead and talk about the accessories. He does come with a Hadoken. It's not really a great sculpt in my opinion. It's not quite centered, I guess. It's a little heavy on this side and really light up here. And the painting's kind of weak, and it just doesn't really look like a standard Hadoken in my opinion. I mean, it's got the general shape, but it doesn't look quite right. It does come with a clear base so that you can have him firing it. And it has some articulation on top of that, but it usually just pops off, so I don't really care for that whole gimmick. He comes with an alternate head, well, an alternate face, which is the yelling face. It's not bad. I don't really care for the overall sculpt of the face, though, for this version and the other version. Now, let's go ahead and just bring them both up. First of all, the hair is, it's not really... There's not enough of it. It doesn't hang over far enough forward, and it sits kind of high on the head. It just doesn't look quite right. It's slightly off in my opinion. Now, the sculpt work is good, and the paint work is typically good, except for on that ear right there. It doesn't look quite right. But I don't really care for the shape of the face. It's just a little bit too feminine, I think. I mean, it's not feminine, but it doesn't look nearly as angular as the in-game version. So how you swap the head is you just basically pull out on the chin here, and you can pull straight down. It's in there pretty tight. There you go. And so that part just pops off and you can swap them out. I do prefer the open mouth over the regular one, but it's not necessarily proper for every pose since it's more of a yelling face. It is painted well, both of them are. Just a little bit off in my opinion in terms of the overall look. Now the eyes do have some gloss on them, so that's a nice touch, and there is shading, and it is good sculpt work. It's just not quite what I was hoping for. The bandana is really soft. It's not posable at all though, and it's not quite the same red as the other part of the red. We'll go ahead and just talk about that since we're talking about the head. He comes with two sets of hands. One set of open hands like this, one for each side obviously. Then he's got two closed hands, two fists like that. Now it does have some nice texture work and some nice kind of like a dry brush to make them look dirty. I like that. I like the overall sculpt. He's got the little wrist things on there, but here's the problem. When you're swapping them out, some people have had a lot of trouble with breakage. Mine are pretty good. They're pretty soft and easy to swap out, but as you'll notice, this comes off too. The ball joint for the wrist is inside the wristband, so you don't really get any of this movement at all. All you can do is really twist it, and that's a problem for me. I don't care for that. They do swap pretty easily for me. Like I said, other people have had some trouble, but luckily I haven't. It's just really limited, and it's kind of ugly because it sits so high. You have to really rotate that every time, which is fine, I guess, but because of that, it limits the articulation quite a bit. But I guess it's something I can live with. It's not a terrible thing. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the figure. That does it for the accessories. The head is on a double ball bar joint. You can kind of see in there, hopefully. So it's got all kinds of mobility. You can get it anywhere you want to. Great range of motion. The neck technically pivots itself, it swivels in there, but it's really hard to get in there to do it, so you're going to more than likely just end up turning the head, which is fine, but that's the way it is. The shoulders do have this forward motion, kind of like the NECA figures do, and most of the PlayArts figures. They come forward quite a bit. The problem with this, and I've heard this is a problem for this, it's a common problem for these figures, is the right one doesn't move, it's frozen. And I know people that have broken that, so I have to try to get to that later on. I haven't worked on it too much yet. Problem with that is the shoulders are shaded really heavily, more so than the rest of the arms even, but definitely more so than this other part and the inside of the torso. So it doesn't really look the best. The sculpt work is okay on the arms. The shoulders have a ball joint just like Marvel Legends do. It's got the disc in there. You can kind of see it. It's really tight though, but you can move the shoulders, this way and front side to side. It's got the bicep swivel in there, which is actually free floating almost because of the elbow joint, which is just like the McFarlane Halo figure. So it swivels at the top, the bottom, and has a ratchet hinge in there as well. So you can really rotate it however you want to and get the bicep to line up, and that's pretty good. And it's hidden fairly well. It's not quite the right color though, so that doesn't help get that in focus. But overall it looks pretty good, and I'm pleased with the elbow articulation. We already talked about the wrist. The upper torso, the sculpt on the clothes is, I don't really care for it personally. It's not very realistic. It's way too wrinkly and too evenly torn. It should have a little bit more of a triangular shape to it, kind of more like the in-game version, but it's not terrible. My biggest problem with the torso is it does have the diaphragm up there and then the waist twist down here, but in order to line up the diaphragm with the lower torso, it kind of puts it off center. You need to have this over here more, and then like that. So it doesn't quite line up just right, in my opinion. And also, you can see the skin coming through the bottom on there, and I can kind of maneuver it down, and I'd have to glue it to get it to stay, otherwise it just keeps popping up. So it's a little bit of an issue, but I can probably fix that. But it does have a good range of motion here at the bottom part for sure. Kind of like an ab crunch, and then it also goes side to side. So it's not a whole lot side to side, but a little bit, and then it rotates. The top part just kind of has a little bit, not a whole bunch, but it rotates and then has some forward back and just a little bit side to side. Now here's my biggest complaint about the figure: the hips and the waist. The whole groin crotch piece is all one piece. It's kind of free floating like the Master Chief figure, but it's so bulky it doesn't really move. And then the shirt that sticks down is also connected. It's all one piece here, so there's really no movement in this part of the gi, and it really impedes the hip articulation a lot. And the hips are huge. I know he's supposed to be wearing baggy pants, and it looks okay once you pose him usually, but they really get in the way. They're huge, huge, huge hip joints, and you can't really do much about it. That being said, it's not too bad in terms of the articulation. As you can see, it's kind of got the standard hip joint for the Play Arts figures. That little cup that goes around the ball joint does spin inside the thigh. It's really hard to get it to do it just because of the size of the thigh, but it does move in there, and you can get the motion out of it. It's just really difficult due to the gi. And then you can't really bring the legs out too much because of the really, really thick thighs, and as you can see, they kind of stick out. It just looks a little bit weird the way they stick out. They should have been narrower, I think. The knees are the standard double jointed knees that we see on many Play Arts figures. They're not too bad in terms of getting ugly as you bend them. They're not too awkward. They're done pretty well. I don't like though that on both sides, if you bend the lower part all the way, you get this going on. It doesn't look good, but you can just avoid that by not bending it all the way. The shins do swivel inside the bottom of the pants, and then you have the double jointed, basically like the elbow again, the little ball joint there that swivels at the top, at the bottom, and is ratcheted. And then the foot also has a kind of an ankle rocker. It's not really, it's a peg that goes in at an angle this way so that the foot actually rotates on that peg, but it works like an ankle rocker, so that's fine. Overall, the sculpt work on the pants is good. I don't care for the torn parts at the bottom for the same reasons I had problems with the shoulder area, but the gi is textured completely, so it is really nice. The belt is done really well. It's nice and soft, and the kanji on there looks great. And like I said, the texture just goes throughout. You can see the seams, and it looks really nice. Overall, it's a good display piece. Like I said, you'll probably have some trouble with the one shoulder and the torso joints, but you can still get them in some good poses fairly easily. And a lot of people said they're hard to stand up, but I found that if you spend any time at all trying to get them to stand up, it really shouldn't be much of an issue. With the extra articulation in the ankle, you should be able to get it to stand pretty much however you want. Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. It's not a super dynamic pose, but it just stands very easily, so no big complaints there. So there it is, guys. There is the PlayArts Kai Super Street Fighter 4 Ryu figure. Just got it today. Really pleased with it overall, but there are those few problems. I would recommend it if you're a big Street Fighter fan. Maybe if you're just an action figure fan in general, and maybe not if you just collect things that you really particularly care for. But there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a wrap on this guy and move on to Chun-Li. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for that, and in the meantime, keep collecting.